talk about Danger at Dunwater, Module U2 by Dave J. Browne with Don Turnbull. This is the sequel to Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, which was the first module from the TSR UK White Dwarfy adjacent team. They also made a number of U modules, three of them, and then they made UK modules as well, overlapping slightly different teams. This is basically by Dave Browne. Don Turnbull is the developer, it says in the back. So, the general opinion on this is quite split, which may seem like a useless thing to say, but basically you typically run into people saying, oh yeah, I loved that trilogy, great trilogy, loved the first bit, loved the continuation with the different tribes you meet and fighting the Sargon at the end. The other side says, typically, U1 is great, all-time classic, U2, U3, less good, more story gamey. And we'll talk about why people say that. I think it's complicated, is my cop-out answer. I think this is a really odd module. It's actually the sort of the real headline is not that this is a bad module or a good module, but that it's an odd module, and we'll talk about why. So it is 32 pages, I think, pretty typical, with a perforated back page to give people a treasure map, and it also has the sample characters on that same sheet. Has the gatefold thing. I guess it's not a gatefold, is it? It's just a fold out. Has the main dungeon map and the region map. Basically, in the previous episode, the previous adventure, you've gone to a haunted house and found out there's pirates underneath. You then sneak on board the pirate ship and find a shipment of weapons intended for some lizardmen. So those are the two things. There are two dungeons, one more famous and one a kind of a slightly different sort of experience, the pirate ship. And then it leads you on to the fact that there's these lizardmen being armed. And here, the main thing you're going to do, the main mission, there are a few other things you can do, is go and sort out the lizardmen, because why are they being armed? And the gimmick is the lizardmen are arming themselves and trying to make an alliance with underwater races, the Coalinth, the Lakatha, and the mermen, and potentially the sea elves as well, so that they can fight the Sargon. They're not the bad guys, in fact, at this point. If you've met the sea elf in the first installment as well, if you rescued him from the pirate ship, then he can help. And so basically, what makes this odd, and we'll talk a bit about the actual dungeon, but in a sense, what makes this odd is that the vast majority of the material for this, the dungeon, which is an interesting, decent dungeon, decent layer, not all-time great, but pretty solid, is sort of a optional sidetrack, because if you could in any other way find out this information, you wouldn't even go there. So what might happen is you're killing a bunch of lizardmen, then you find out that they're essentially innocent, they're not malicious against the surface dwellers, and then you ally with them. That leads on to number 3, and there's some side quests associated with all of this, and there's some interesting gimmicks here. Like if you make peace with the lizardmen, they will charge you weregild for any lizardmen you've killed. They say, look, we'll be your allies and we'll help you, and we'll help you with it. You can join our alliance and we can work together, but you need to pay for those you've killed. You need to return the treasure that is ours, not all the treasure, but the treasure that was ours that you found, and you need to pay for the dead. That's really fun. So the gimmick overall is not uninteresting, and we'll go through the dungeon a tiny bit, but the biggest problem is that this is an entire module, and because you're kind of running these, the expedition is in a fairly linear fashion. You have Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, you have Danger at Dunwater, then you have the final enemy. You run one, then the other, then the other. The entire middle act, therefore, is sort of this oddball. It's not just that it's it definitely fits, by the way, the U/UK sensibility of slightly alternative routes through and into an adventure. Most famously, U1 and UK1. U1, Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, you think it's a ghost ship. It's not a ghost ship. Oh, sorry, you think it's a ghost house. It's not a ghost house. They're making you think it's a ghost house. You don't investigate underneath because it's a pirate lair. And there's a pirate ship, which is a kind of unique setting. UK1, Beyond the Crystal Cave, you shouldn't really fight anything. It's very unusual. You should use magic and other things, but you shouldn't fight things if you can help it, because you're going to solve this via intelligence, diplomacy, good magic use. This fits into that. The problem is it's a bait and switch where if the Council of Saltmarsh, I mean, how do you present it? The Council of Saltmarsh say, oh, go and find out what they're doing. You go and negotiate, and then it's over, and the entire module is redundant. Or nearly redundant there. As I say, there's some side quests. Or you say, oh, we're really scared, they're going to attack us. Go and stop them getting weapons, or go and find out what's happening. Go and intercept them. Well, you're likely to fight them. The PCs are likely to fight the lizardmen, and that means that you're forcing your players into, well, and the players may well enjoy the adventure, but it's something where you don't ultimately want them to go all the way that way, because it might be more satisfying for everyone if you go the other way, which creates a bit of a story game dilemma, doesn't it? Of what is the best story? You're almost creating decisions in the game based on producing a story ending that you or the players would prefer, rather than giving them options amongst the things they can do, allowing them to make good decisions. Now, a little bit of this is fine, and I've written a small kobold lair where actually the chieftain was, he's lawful neutral. They'd run away from a dragon, and he was charging taxes, i.e. robbing people, but he thought that was just what governments did. He's like, well, you're in my woods, you need to pay me for me keeping this safe from other guys, and PCs I've run that several times, and PCs, because of the way the kobolds act, PCs entering this campaign setting learn and deal with that differently, more or less bloodily. But that's in the whole context of a campaign setting. And I think that's the difference here, is that because it's a linear adventure path, either you ditch the entire module via a swift negotiation, or virtually the entire module, or you instead do something which may well be quite frustrating eventually. And you could just say, well, that's up to the players, but then you think, the players are making decisions. But the DM is in an odd position where either the DM is being encouraged to sort of actively misdirect the players, not via the description of a setting, but via what the players, the PCs particularly, are being told to do, or to direct them towards the correct solution by what the PCs are being told to do. That's what I mean. It does, but whereas here's how you solve that, and then we'll look at the dungeon itself just briefly. Really, you solve this via having all these modules on the map. There's some lizardmen there, there's some other people. The players have different options about what to investigate. You need to open up U1 there for a little bit. But if there is just one more layer with some neutral lizardmen, which they are, who don't really like the humans, maybe there's sometimes problems, but there's no proof with the shipments here that, someone should say, look, we don't know that they're going to be aggressive against us. They have been in the past, but not, that's usually been over border disputes and stuff. So look, that's one option. You can go and sneak in and find out what they're doing, maybe gather intelligence. That's then the rumour you give them. You give the players a very neutral rumour. Or you can do this, this, or this. And the players then suddenly are back in the position of deciding what is important and making their own judgments about what's likely to be happening. Whereas the more linear it is, the more players are looped into expected behaviours. So actually, that's the solution. But then it doesn't make an amazing standalone module. That's my problem. Is it's the things in this are good fun and can fit into a campaign that I don't think they're very good as part of an adventure path, really. So there's a synopsis. There's discussion about getting into the alliance. The funny thing here is you're being told all about this alliance you can join if you can make peace with the lizardmen. Then there are some encounter tables, just a very short one. Stuff about journeying to the marsh, and there is one set encounter as well as the possible ones, which is that bullywugs will be waiting to ambush. They are regularly there waiting to ambush people, and so you fight a leader, 3 large individuals and 21 normal individuals. For a second level party, which is probably what you are, this is tough, but doable. And there's a magic item, there's a +1 shield. They have a lair which has some Ioun stones, helm of underwater action, and a bunch of treasure. So there's some decent stuff there that your party, this is very much premised not on 4 second levels or 4 third levels. 4 third levels may do better, but versus 25 bullywugs still. This is premised really on like 8. Well, it's adventure for character levels 1 to 4. I think you're talking about, 8 first to third, depending on the class. If you're hitting third, you're probably not doing that just off U1. You'd really have to scrape out the treasure there. If your thieves are hitting third from that, you've done very well. But it allows it a bit more flexibility. The point is, it's a sign, there's lots of this here, that it is not impossible for a larger, more traditional party round that kind of, first to fourth, but really second, third, to accomplish. 8 first levels can compete at 8, remember, it's just the hit points. The problem for first levels is hit point thresholds. And the fact they usually don't have extra spells, like they don't have more magic user spells, things like that. So That tends to be their problem. Is not that they cannot stand toe to toe and kill a bunch of these guys or do the damage, but that they can't take the damage. But yeah, so there's that's an encounter with a kind of lair. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but just as an extra thing, it's completely fine that modules have that, you know. Then there is a description of the lizardmen's lair. I'll show you the map again. It has loads of entrances. It's loopy doopied. It has lots of ways you can go. This is reflective because this is what, 1981 or something, 1982 it's published. It is reflective of a mindset that says, look, the dungeon needs to be interesting to explore. There need to be different ways, you need to be able to be lost in the dungeon, not know where next is best to go unless you've gathered information. There needs to be options between, is this a better way in, or is this a better way in? What is likely to be the safest way in? Like, that is a mindset in early D&D, and it's a mindset that has come through into very good OSR products. Not everyone likes it, I guess, but the reason loopy-doopying is so popular in the OSR is because it creates kind of decision nodes, doesn't it? Really obvious decision nodes about play, and the possibility of like not having perfect solutions available where you just kind of flick the switch and say, well, this is the best combat tactic. You have to say, well, let's go this way because maybe this is the best way to go. So yeah, I would say the map above and the map below, the regional map and the dungeon map, track to each other so you can see roughly where people are entering. What there are, I should say, before I'll pick out a few encounters from the thing itself, but I will quickly say, apart from the appendix, which has just stats generally speaking, and a couple of other bits of information, the optional venture is there is a giant crocodile who's being controlled by an oriental dragon, and they are bothering the lizardmen. And so you can go and fight it. At this point, I mean, a giant crocodile is 7 HD, 47 hit points, 2 attacks at 3d6 and 2d10. This is very much at you are second and third level. There's lots of you. Put this way, you know, 8 third levels will kill that giant crocodile, I think, usually, because you can put out enough spells and you can pour in enough missile fire when you can. Yeah, it's a tough encounter, but it's meant to be there as an option for Wereguild or for buying into the Alliance. The Oriental Dragon has been kind of doing this, I think, to keep the lizardmen away? I think something like that. The Oriental Dragon just sees the crocodile as a watchdog. The Oriental Dragon, the Panlung, is... I think you are just pointed towards the theme folio for him. I don't think you're given anything like adequate stats for him. Yeah, he has some good treasure as well. That's one thing, is that if you undertake that, you're going to be able to not just do the favour for the lizardmen, but if you were to kill the Oriental Dragon, which you don't have to, you would certainly end up in a much better position. Scimitar +2, Potion of Superheroism with 2 drafts, Protection from Undead, 3,800 GP worth of necklace, a bunch of other coinage, and a periapt of proof against poison +3. Really decent treasure. I would say it's very dangerous and challenging especially because you're probably fighting the crocodile and then the Oriental Dragon at the same time, roughly, or consecutively, rather than in separate layers. You're going to find its lair afterward. So yes, I'd say it's at the challenging end, but they are interesting encounters. They're having different interesting things going on. Now, the lizardmen, it is a Gygaxian naturalist place there are a couple of patrol patterns described. There's a few reaction patterns of, if there's something that happens here, they'll come to here. There's places for civilians and stuff. It's on the compressed scale that Gygaxian naturalism tends to have. In terms of interesting encounters, there are some weird things, by the way. There is a whole thing about like the lizardmen, to stay moist, carry around oil skin with a basting material is kind of dumb. It's one of the odder things in this. I guess maybe they would do that. But yeah, there's a lot of chests with not very much interesting stuff in it. So that's sort of it. Treasure-wise, a lot of the rooms, a lot of the stuff that's happening is not super exciting. What's interesting is the war game situation of... So this is the thing, if they're just your enemies and there's not this whole bait and switch, this is a perfectly decent wargaming encounter. Like, oh yeah, you need to go and defeat the lizardmen. In some way, or you need to go and steal this thing from them. There's some decent built NPCs to challenge you. There is some okay treasure. Lots of the treasure is boring. Some of it is just kind of enjoyable description. A silver gong and striker worth 100 GP. I mean, that's going to weigh £2, something like that. It's pretty efficient treasure. It has a nice, memorable description. The chief shaman has potions of healing, neutralize poison, cure disease, etc. So, that's good. There's some setting realistic magic treasure. That's appealing. Oh, and the chief shaman also carries a staff of the python and has a gold necklace with pearls as his personal treasure. So you're like, oh, that's fun. And these things usually split across rooms. Their treasure is kept separately within separate rooms to their meeting rooms or where they might be working. And that's nice. There is the Gygaxian naturalism is pretty good, pretty solid, without being amazing. As I say, with some of it maybe going too far. Like the oilskin stuff. I don't think that's really Gygaxian. They have guard dogs on on one of their entrances. If you enter from the marsh, there's giant lizards. There is some, decent gold value treasure in the chief's treasure room. That's not particularly exciting. There's no magic there. There's lots of silver in sacks. There is venomous snakes, and there's a poison triggered, or poison needle chest with 2,000 electrum, a gold crown worth 1,000, a gold bonded ivory scepter worth 1,000, a gold collar set with emeralds worth 2,000. You've got XP here. This, the thing is, it's also a valuable one as a raid scenario just for treasure. Not really. You avoid the patrols. You avoid the things like that if you can. Again, there's a harem. If you've ever wanted a lizardman harem, this is the one for you. There's more treasure separate from the chief's treasure room and his sleeping quarters. And then there's this interesting character. This is the thing. This is kind of what's meant to be one of the things that gives it away. Is a non-competent lizardman minister, presumably minister here in the sense of politician, government official, who is making this alliance and who is despised by the traditionalists who think the lizardmen should just stay isolationist. And if you burst in, he just wants to chat to you. He doesn't want to fight you. There's some books. He owns some fun books, just flavor-wise that you can. There's more stuff about gemstones if you're into the one from U1, the book about gemstones. There's a whole thing where you can rescue a Sargon from a cell, and he just wants you to get out because these crazy lizardmen are being horrible. They keep saying they're going to go to war, so this gives you conflicting reports. I think you're going to trust the lizardmen over the shark man if you have the option usually, but who knows? There's a few other bits. There's a couple of dead adventurers, and for instance, with one, he's got a wand of secret door and trap detection and a magic use of scroll of knock. The dead thief does. There's the diplomatic rooms, a bit like in some of the G modules. There's some Colents, like Catherine Merman, and you can go and make friends with them. They have some treasure. You could kill them. So basically, as here's an alternate use. I'm saying, it's not great as part of this adventure path. Do you know what? Just as a lizardman lair that has not much to do with the sea ghost or the haunted house, you would probably really find this valuable as something to drop in a campaign by the sea. You could add in stuff about the Sargon, but you can have it be something quite separate from you're working from a town council and they want to know about this stuff. As a kind of, there's some basic, not amazing, but basic wargaming elements to do with the garrison. There's some interesting treasure layouts. The treasure layout is actually pretty strong. Like I said, it's spread in realistic and predictable, but not and not crazy ways. Not kind of like everything's in one room. There's a decent layout of the map. You can make different options. You might choose to go in the front door. You might choose to go in via the lizards. You might choose to go in, which is via the marsh, or the sea cave, which it goes into the where all the embassies for the sea peoples are. So you might go in one of those. That's interesting. Different things can happen. It's replayable because of that. It's reusable. So my takeaway is, man, this is a pretty good module, but not as U2 in the middle of a adventure path. Once you break the chains of seeing it in those terms, the possibilities and the qualities come out, it's still not going to be top tier. And I say that just because nothing really pops. There's no absolutely iconic encounters. The order of battle and wargaming stuff is not so thoroughgoing that that's going to be amazingly exciting. It's not such an interesting layout with different kinds of things going on that you're going to be like, oh wow, that was really interesting exploration. The different things that make adventures work for people, none of them are operating at absolute full intensity. And so I think, with even as a standalone module or as a module on a campaign map, it's only good, but it is good, not poor in that context. If you've run this, read this, etc., tell me what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time.